The transport ship Meridian groaned under the stress of atmospheric entry as Captain Marcus Chen gripped the command console. The alien world below them stretched endlessly, covered in crystalline formations that caught the light of 3 distant suns. This was Draconis Prime, the legendary homeworld of the Void Dragons, and humanity's first official contact with the galaxy's most mysterious civilization. Atmospheric composition stable, Captain, reported Lieutenant Sarah Kim from the navigation station. The Dragons are broadcasting landing coordinates directly to our systems. Marcus nodded, his weathered face reflecting years of deep space exploration. At 52, he had commanded more first contact missions than any other human officer in the Terran Federation. But nothing had prepared him for this moment. The Void Dragons had remained silent for 3,000 years, watching galactic civilizations rise and fall from their hidden realm. Now, inexplicably, they had reached out specifically to humanity. The message had arrived at Terra Prime 6 months ago, transmitted through quantum channels that shouldn't have existed. It was simple, direct, and impossible to ignore. Send your worthiest representative to the sacred altar of Draconis Prime. The stars have chosen. The Federation Council had debated for weeks about who to send. Some argued for their most decorated admiral. Others suggested their finest diplomat. But the Dragons had been specific in their second transmission: send the one who walks between worlds, who speaks the language of both flesh and void. That description had pointed to exactly one person in all of human space. Marcus Chen had spent 15 years exploring the galaxy's edge, making contact with 17 different alien species. He spoke 9 alien languages fluently and had a reputation for understanding cultures that others found incomprehensible. But, more than that, he possessed something rare among humans: the ability to sense what others could not see. "Sir, we're receiving another transmission," Kim announced. "It's different from their previous messages." The main screen flickered, and, suddenly, the bridge was filled with a presence that made everyone step back instinctively. A massive dragon's head materialized in the holographic display, scales that seemed to contain miniature galaxies, eyes like burning stars. Captain Marcus Chen of the human vessel Meridian, the dragon spoke, its voice creating harmonics that resonated in their bones. "I am Sci-Fi, keeper of the sacred flame. You arrive at the appointed time, as the ancient prophecies foretold." Marcus stepped forward, fighting every instinct that told him to show submission. "Honored Sci-Fi, humanity accepts your invitation with gratitude and respect. We come seeking understanding between our peoples." The dragon's eyes seemed to pierce directly through him. "Understanding is but the first step, human captain. You have been chosen for a purpose beyond mere diplomacy. The sacred altar has awakened for the first time in 3 millennia, calling specifically for one of your kind." "What is the sacred altar?" Marcus asked, keeping his voice steady despite the overwhelming presence before him. "It is the heart of our civilization, the nexus through which we commune with the cosmic forces that govern all existence. For 3,000 years, it has remained silent, waiting. Now it stirs, and it speaks a name from across the stars, your name, Marcus Chen." The implications hit everyone on the bridge simultaneously. The Dragons hadn't simply decided to contact humanity. Something ancient and powerful had specifically called for one human by name. "Land at the coordinates we provide," Sci-Fi continued. "Come alone to the sacred altar. Your crew may remain with your vessel, but this journey is yours to make. The stars themselves have chosen you for what is to come." The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. Captain, Dr. Elena Vasquez spoke from her position at the science station. As the mission's xenobiologist and Marcus's closest friend for over 2 decades, she was the only one who dared voice what everyone was thinking. "This changes everything. They're not just making contact, they're fulfilling some kind of prophecy." Marcus turned to face his crew, seeing the mixture of awe and concern in their faces. These were experienced officers who had seen the wonders and dangers of the galaxy, but even they were shaken by what had just occurred. "I need to understand what we're walking into," he said. "Elena, what do we know about dragon religious practices?" Dr. Vasquez pulled up her research files on the main display. "Very little, unfortunately. the dragons are incredibly secretive about their spiritual beliefs. What we do know comes from fragments, scattered references in ancient Zephyrian texts, partial archaeological evidence from worlds they've abandoned. Images flickered across the screen, towering crystalline structures, geometric patterns that hurt to look at directly, symbols that seem to shift when observed. The sacred altar appears to be their most holy site, she continued. References suggest it's connected to something called the stellar convergence, a cosmic event that occurs roughly every 3,000 years. But, Captain, if their prophecies specifically mention you by name, then, this isn't random, Marcus finished. Something about me, or humanity, is connected to whatever they're planning. Lieutenant Kim looked up from her console. Sir, we're approaching the landing zone. It's incredible. The main screen shifted to show their destination. A vast crystalline city stretched across the landscape below, its spires reaching impossibly high into the atmosphere. At the center rose a structure that defied comprehension, a pyramid of pure energy, its sides shifting through colors that had no names. Lightning played constantly around its apex, and the very air around it shimmered with power. The sacred altar, Dr. Vasquez breathed. It's beautiful and terrifying. As the meridian descended through the upper atmosphere, more details became visible. The Dragon City was ancient beyond measure, its architecture following principles that human minds struggled to process. Bridges of crystallized starlight connected floating platforms. Gardens of metallic plants grew in impossible spirals. And, everywhere, the massive forms of dragons moved with grace that belied their size. Captain, Communications Officer Torres announced, we're receiving landing clearance. They're directing us to a platform near the city's outskirts. Marcus nodded, his mind racing through possibilities. Everything about this mission had been unprecedented, but now it was moving beyond first contact into something that could reshape humanity's understanding of its place in the universe. The landing was smooth, the meridian touching down on a platform of polished stone that seemed to absorb and reflect light simultaneously. Through the viewports, they could see dragons gathering at a respectful distance, their scales catching and refracting the light of the three suns. Atmospheric scan complete, reported Kim. The air is breathable for humans, though the oxygen content is higher than Earth normal. Temperature is comfortable. No detected toxins or pathogens. Marcus stood and straightened his uniform. The Federation dress blue he wore was simple compared to the grandeur surrounding them, but it represented everything humanity had achieved in its journey to the stars. He turned to address his crew one final time before leaving the ship. I don't know what's waiting for me at that altar, he said. But, whatever happens, remember that you represent not just the Federation, but all of humanity. Dr. Vasquez, you have command in my absence. If something goes wrong, if I don't return, make sure our people know that humanity was chosen for something greater than ourselves. Elena stepped forward and clasped his shoulder. You'll return, Marcus. You always do. But, if these dragons have been waiting 3,000 years specifically for you, then maybe it's time to find out why. Marcus smiled, the expression not quite hiding his apprehension. I'll try to bring back good news. He made his way to the airlock, each step bringing him closer to a destiny he couldn't have imagined. As the outer door cycled open, the air of Draconis Prime washed over him, charged with energy, carrying scents of ozone and something indefinable that spoke of ancient power. Sci-Fi waited for him at the base of the landing platform, the dragon's massive form somehow managing to appear both majestic and welcoming. Up close, Marcus could see details that the hologram had missed, the way starlight seemed to flow beneath the dragon's scales, the intelligence that burned in those cosmic eyes. Captain Chen, Sci-Fi rumbled. You honor us with your courage. Few beings in the galaxy would walk willingly toward their destiny without knowing what it holds. Wisdom sometimes means accepting uncertainty, Marcus replied, drawing on his years of diplomatic experience. My people have a saying, the greatest adventures begin with the smallest steps. The dragon's head tilted slightly, a gesture that somehow conveyed both amusement and respect. Your species continues to surprise us. Come, the sacred altar awaits, and there are truths you must learn before the convergence begins. As they began walking toward the city, Marcus became aware of the other dragons watching their passage. They lined the walkways and, perched on crystal formations, thousands of ancient beings observing humanity's representative with an intensity that was both humbling and unnerving. "Why me?" Marcus asked as they walked. "Of all the humans in the galaxy, why was I specifically chosen?" "That is not for me to answer," Sixthera replied. "The sacred altar speaks its own truth. But, I will tell you this, the choice was not made by us, but by forces far older than our civilization. We are merely the guardians of what is to come." The path to the sacred altar wound through the Dragon City, past wonders that challenged every assumption Marcus had about what was possible. He saw dragons tending gardens where the plants grew in mathematical spirals that somehow produced music. He witnessed younglings learning to fly by riding currents of pure energy. He passed workshops where master craftsmen shaped materials that seemed to exist in more than 3 dimensions. "Your city is incredible," he said, genuinely awed by what surrounded them. "This is nothing compared to what you will see," Sixthera replied. "Our civilization spans not just worlds, but dimensions. What you observe here is merely the shadow cast by our true realm." They climbed a spiraling ramp that wound around the base of the sacred altar, each step bringing them higher and revealing more of the structure's impossible nature. The pyramid seemed to exist partially outside normal space, its edges shifting through realities that Marcus could sense but not quite see. "The stellar convergence occurs every 3,000 years, Sixthera explained as they climbed. It is when the cosmic forces align in such a way that the barriers between dimensions become thin. During this time, it becomes possible to reshape the very foundations of reality." Marcus felt a chill that had nothing to do with the altitude. "Reshape reality? What are you planning to do?" "Not what we plan to do," the dragon corrected. "What you will choose to do. The sacred altar has determined that humanity must be given the opportunity to command the stars themselves." They reached a platform near the altar's apex, and Marcus found himself standing before a structure that defied every law of physics he understood. The sacred altar was both solid crystal and flowing energy, both ancient stone and newborn starlight. Symbols covered its surface, not carved, but somehow existing within the material itself. "Place your hand upon the altar," Sixthera instructed. "Let it know you, as it has known you across the vast distances of space and time." Marcus approached the crystalline surface, his hand trembling slightly as he reached out. The moment his palm touched the altar, the universe exploded around him. Visions crashed through his mind, the birth and death of stars, the rise and fall of civilizations, the delicate web of causality that connected every living thing in the galaxy. He saw humanity's future spread out before him in 1,000 different possibilities, each one dependent on choices that had not yet been made. And, through it all, he heard a voice that spoke directly to his soul. "Marcus Chen of Earth, you have been chosen to stand at the crossroads of destiny. Your species possesses something that no other race in the galaxy has achieved, the perfect balance between ambition and compassion, between the desire to explore and the wisdom to preserve. The stellar convergence approaches, and, with it, the opportunity to either elevate all sentient life or condemn it to eternal stagnation." The voice paused, and Marcus felt the weight of cosmic responsibility settling upon his shoulders. "You will be given the power to command the stars themselves, to reshape the galaxy according to your will. But power without wisdom is destruction, and wisdom without action is meaningless. You must choose not just for your own species, but for all life that looks up at the night sky and dreams of something greater." The visions faded, and Marcus found himself kneeling before the altar, Sixthera's concerned face hovering above him. He realized that tears were streaming down his cheeks, tears of awe, of terror, and of desperate hope. "The altar has shown you the truth," Sixthera said gently. "Now you understand why humanity was chosen. Your species alone has the potential to use such power responsibly." Marcus struggled to his feet, his mind reeling from what he had experienced. "But, I'm just one person. How can I possibly make such decisions for all of humanity?" "You are not just one person," the dragon replied. "You are the bridge between what is and what could be. The convergence will amplify not just your power, but your connection to every human consciousness in the galaxy. You will speak with the voice of your entire species." As they stood before the sacred altar, its crystalline surface beginning to pulse with increasing intensity, Marcus realized that everything in his life had led to this moment. Every first contact, every diplomatic crisis he had resolved, every time he had chosen understanding over fear, it had all been preparation for what was to come. When does the convergence begin? He asked. Sci-Fi looked toward the sky, where the three suns were beginning to align in a configuration that occurred only once every 3 millennia. Soon, Captain Chen. Very soon. And, when it does, the fate of every star in the galaxy will rest in human hands. The chamber beneath the sacred altar was a marvel that challenged every assumption Marcus had about space and architecture. Crystalline walls stretched impossibly high, their surfaces alive with flowing patterns of light that responded to his presence. Ancient dragons moved through the space with reverent purpose, their massive forms somehow graceful in the confined area. The convergence chamber has not been open for 3,000 years, Sci-Fi explained as they descended through passages that seemed to exist partially outside normal geometry. Not since the last time the cosmic forces aligned to permit the reshaping of stellar destiny. Marcus followed closely, his mind still reeling from the visions the sacred altar had shown him. The responsibility weighing on his shoulders felt heavier than the gravity of a dozen worlds. What happened during the last convergence? Sci-Fi's massive head turned slightly, cosmic eyes reflecting memories of eons past. The Zephyrians were chosen then. An ancient race, older than most civilizations that exist today. They possessed great wisdom and technological mastery beyond anything the galaxy had seen. What did they do with the power? The dragon was quiet for several steps before answering. They chose preservation over progress. Used the cosmic forces to create perfect stasis, ensuring that no civilization could advance beyond predetermined limits. For 3,000 years, the galaxy has existed in careful balance, with no species permitted to grow beyond their assigned sphere. Understanding dawned on Marcus like a cold sunrise. That's why no one has achieved faster than light travel comparable to yours. Why certain technologies seem impossible to develop. The Zephyrians built limitations into the very fabric of space. Precisely. They believed that unchecked advancement led to destruction, so they created cosmic laws that prevented any species from developing weapons capable of destroying multiple star systems. They eliminated the possibility of galactic-scale warfare by eliminating the possibility of galactic-scale power. As they descended deeper into the ancient structure, Marcus began to see other dragons emerging from side passages. These were different from the ones he had encountered on the surface, older, bearing markings that spoke of incredible age and accumulated wisdom. Their scales held the deep colors of nebulae, and their eyes carried the weight of millennia. The Council of Eternals, Sci-Fi explained. They have watched over the convergence ritual since the dawn of our civilization. Each has lived through multiple cosmic alignments, though few have witnessed it choosing. One of the ancient dragons approached, its voice like the echo of dying stars. Captain Marcus Chen of Earth. I am Vox-Miran, oldest among the Watchers. I was present during the last convergence, when the Zephyrians made their choice. Marcus inclined his head respectfully. Honored Vox-Miran. I hope to prove worthy of the trust being placed in humanity. Worthiness is not the question, the ancient dragon replied. The sacred altar chooses based on necessity, not merit. The galaxy stands at a crossroads, and the limitations imposed by the Zephyrians are beginning to break down. Breaking down how? Vox-Miran gestured with one massive claw, and the crystalline walls around them suddenly displayed images that made Marcus's blood run cold. Star systems under siege by mechanical monstrosities. Worlds consumed by gray matter that converted everything to identical structures. Space itself being torn apart by weapons that operated on principles beyond current understanding. The Devourers, Sci-Fi explained grimly. They exist in the spaces between galaxies, feeding on cosmic energy. The Zephyrian limitations that prevented galactic-scale warfare also prevented the development of defenses against threats that operate beyond galactic boundaries. Marcus studied the images with growing horror. The mechanical entities shown were unlike anything humanity had encountered. They didn't seem to be governed by the physics that constrained other life forms. How long before they reach our galaxy? Their advanced scouts have already penetrated the outer rim, Vox-Miran replied.
The Zephyrian barriers slow them, but cannot stop them entirely.
Within 50 years, they will reach inhabited systems. Within a century, they will have consumed half the galaxy. The full scope of the situation was beginning to crystallize in Marcus's mind. So the choice isn't just about how to use the power of the convergence. It's about whether to maintain the Zephyrian limitations and face certain destruction, or remove those limitations and risk what might happen if civilizations develop unchecked power.
Now you begin to understand, Sci-Fi said. This is why the sacred altar chose humanity.
Your species has demonstrated both the innovation necessary to develop galaxy-saving technologies and the wisdom to consider the consequences of such development. They entered the heart of the convergence chamber, and Marcus found himself standing in a space that seemed to contain infinite possibility. The ceiling was lost in darkness above, while the floor was a perfect mirror of crystalline material that reflected not his image, but his potential futures. Around the chamber's perimeter, dozens of ancient dragons took their positions, their combined presence creating a field of power that made the air itself thrum with energy. At the center of the space stood a second altar, this one clearly designed for human proportions. Its surface was a complex array of crystalline formations that seemed to pulse in rhythm with his heartbeat. The convergence altar, Voxmiron announced. Through it, the cosmic forces will flow, waiting to be shaped by conscious will. But understand this, Captain Chen, once the process begins, there is no turning back. Whatever choice you make will be written into the fundamental laws of reality. Marcus approached the altar slowly, feeling the weight of every step. Around him, the dragons began a harmonic resonance that seemed to reach into dimensions beyond the physical. The sound created patterns in the air itself, geometric forms that his mind could sense but not quite comprehend. Before we begin, he said, turning to face the assembled dragons, I need to understand something. Why haven't you taken this power yourselves? You clearly understand its implications better than any human could. Sy-Xthera's expression conveyed something that might have been sadness. Because we have already had our time of choosing, eons ago. We reshaped ourselves to exist partially outside normal space and time, gaining the ability to observe the cosmic flow but sacrificing our capacity to change it. We are guardians now, not actors. Voxmiron added, each species can be chosen only once in their evolutionary history. The cosmic forces ensure this to prevent any single race from dominating the galaxy's development. Humanity's time is now. Marcus placed his hands on the convergence altar, and immediately felt the connection forming. Not just to the dragons around him, but to something infinitely larger. Through quantum entanglement effects that operated beyond current scientific understanding, he became aware of every human consciousness in the galaxy. Dr. Vasquez aboard the Meridian, working frantically to analyze the energy readings from the chamber below. The colonists on New Terra, looking up at their night sky and wondering about their place in the universe. Scientists on research stations throughout human space, pushing the boundaries of knowledge. Children taking their first steps on worlds their grandparents could never have imagined. All of them became part of his awareness, their dreams and fears and hopes flowing through him like a vast river of consciousness. The stellar convergence begins, Voxmiron announced, his voice echoing through dimensions Marcus couldn't name. The cosmic forces align to permit the reshaping of reality's foundation. Choose now, Marcus Chen of Earth, for all sentient life in the galaxy. Through the altar, Marcus could feel the cosmic machinery that governed stellar physics. The Zephyrian limitations were visible to him now as crystal structures woven through the fabric of space itself, preventing certain technologies from functioning, limiting the rate at which civilizations could expand. But he could also sense the approaching devourers, entities that existed in the spaces between the fundamental forces, consuming the energy that held reality together. The Zephyrian barriers that limited galactic civilizations were like paper walls against such threats. The choice crystallized in his mind with devastating clarity. Remove the limitations and risk unleashing terrible weapons upon the galaxy. Maintain them and watch as the devourers consumed everything humanity had ever built or dreamed of building. But, as the collective consciousness of humanity flowed through him, Marcus began to see a third possibility. The Zephyrians made their choice based on fear, he said, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber despite being barely above a whisper. They saw the potential for destruction and chose stagnation. But there's another path. Through the altar, he reached out to touch the cosmic machinery that governed galactic development. But, instead of simply removing or maintaining the Zephyrian limitations, he began to reshape them. Where the ancient barriers had prevented all advanced development, Marcus created selective permeability. Technologies that could harm entire civilizations remained blocked, but defensive innovations would flow freely. The barriers became membranes rather than walls, allowing beneficial advancement while filtering out destructive possibilities. Around the chamber, the dragons watched in amazement as patterns of power they had never witnessed began to flow through the cosmic infrastructure.
Impossible, Voxmiron breathed. He's not choosing between the existing options. He's creating new cosmic law.
But Marcus wasn't finished. Drawing on humanity's greatest strength, its ability to build cooperative relationships with other species, he began incorporating safeguards that the Zephyrians had never considered. Instead of preventing dangerous technologies from being developed, he wove requirements into the cosmic fabric itself that such technologies could only function when multiple species worked together.
Faster-than-light weapons that could destroy star systems would require the combined knowledge of at least 3 different civilizations. Planet-killing devices would only activate when representatives of 5 species agreed on their necessity.
The most powerful technologies would demand unprecedented levels of cooperation and understanding. He's making conflict counterproductive, Sci-Xthera observed with growing wonder. The more destructive the potential application, the more cooperation is required. Through the altar, Marcus felt the new cosmic laws taking hold throughout the galaxy. On distant worlds, scientists would suddenly find that their most dangerous theoretical weapons simply wouldn't function without collaborative input from other species. Military leaders would discover that their most ambitious conquest plans required technologies that could only be developed through peaceful cooperation. But the defensive technologies needed to fight the Devourers flowed freely to every civilization in the galaxy. Barrier generators, reality anchors, weapons that could damage entities existing between dimensions, all became possible to develop without artificial limitation.
The process was exhausting beyond anything Marcus had ever experienced.
He felt as though he were writing new laws of physics with his bare hands, each change requiring tremendous effort and absolute precision. Through the collective human consciousness flowing through him, he drew strength from 6 billion minds, each contributing their unique perspective to the reshaping of cosmic law. Hours passed, or perhaps days, time flowed differently in the convergence chamber.
Finally, Marcus felt the new framework lock into place throughout the galaxy.
The cosmic machinery hummed with altered purpose, and the sacred altar's glow began to fade. He collapsed to his knees beside the altar, physically and mentally drained but aware that something fundamental had changed in the universe itself. "It is done," Voxmiron announced, his ancient voice filled with wonder. "The cosmic laws are rewritten."
Never in all our observations have we witnessed such an elegant solution. Sci-Xthera approached and gently helped Marcus to his feet.
"You have done something remarkable, Captain Chen. You found a path between destruction and stagnation, creating the possibility for growth without the certainty of devastation."
Marcus looked around the chamber, seeing the approval and amazement in the dragon's cosmic eyes.
But his work wasn't finished yet.
"The new laws will take time to propagate throughout the galaxy," he said. "How long before civilizations can begin developing the technologies they'll need to fight the Devourers?"
"The quantum effects are already spreading," Voxmiron replied. "Within months, your human scientists will find that certain theoretical barriers have dissolved. Within years, the cooperative requirements will reshape how every civilization approaches technological development."
"And the dragons?" Marcus asked. "What role will you play in what's coming?" Sy-Xthera's expression conveyed something that might have been anticipation.
"We will continue as guardians, but with new purpose. The cosmic laws you have written include provisions for guides, species that can help others understand how to work together effectively.
This is a role we can fulfill."
As they prepared to leave the convergence chamber, Marcus felt the connection to human consciousness beginning to fade. But the memory of that vast collective awareness remained, along with the understanding that humanity was no longer alone in facing the challenges ahead. "There's one more thing," he said as they climbed toward the surface. The cooperative requirements I built into the cosmic laws, they're going to fundamentally change how species relate to each other. Wars will become not just morally wrong, but practically impossible to fight with advanced weapons.
Perhaps that is humanity's greatest gift to the galaxy, Voxmiron observed.
Not just the tools to survive the coming crisis, but the framework for a future where survival doesn't require eternal struggle. When they emerged into the light of Draconis Prime's 3 suns, Marcus saw that the entire city had gathered to witness his return. Thousands of dragons filled the crystalline spires and floating platforms, their combined song creating harmonies that spoke of hope and renewal. But his thoughts were already turning toward the journey home, where he would need to explain to his crew, and eventually to all of humanity, that their species had just become the architects of a new galactic age. 6 months after the convergence, Marcus stood in the observation deck of Terra Prime Station, watching as representatives from 27 different species gathered for the first Galactic Cooperative Council. Through the transparent aluminum viewports, he could see ships of every conceivable design, crystalline Zephyrian vessels that had emerged from 3 millennia of isolation, organic Trilorian bioships that grew rather than being built, and sleek human craft that represented the pinnacle of collaborative engineering. Dr. Elena Vasquez joined him at the viewport, her expression mixing pride with concern.
The preliminary reports are beyond anything we projected.
Human innovation centers on Earth have developed more defensive technologies in 6 months than most civilizations achieve in centuries.
Marcus nodded, still amazed by the transformation his species had undergone.
The cosmic laws he had written during the convergence hadn't just removed artificial barriers to advancement, they had fundamentally changed how humans approached problem solving. Knowing that their most powerful innovations would require cooperation with other species, human scientists had become the galaxy's most enthusiastic collaborators.
"What's the status on the Devourer detection network?" he asked. Elena consulted her datapad. "Extraordinary progress.
The Void Dragons provided the theoretical framework, the Zephyrians contributed computational matrices beyond our current understanding, and human engineers designed practical implementations.
The first installation goes online next week."
Through the viewport, Marcus could see the construction scaffolding around Terra Prime's massive communication array. The Galactic Early Warning System, as it was being called, would create a network of sensors capable of detecting Devourer incursions across multiple dimensions. More importantly, it represented exactly the kind of cooperative achievement that the new cosmic laws encouraged. Captain Chen to the command center, came the announcement over the station's communication system. Priority 1 transmission from the Outer Rim. Marcus and Elena exchanged glances. Priority 1 meant contact with the Devourers had been confirmed. The command center buzzed with controlled activity as Marcus arrived.
Admiral Sarah Morrison, who commanded Terra Prime's defense forces, looked up from a holographic display showing the galaxy's outer edge. "We've got confirmation from the Andorian scouts," she reported grimly. 3 Devourer advance ships have been detected in the Kepler sector. They're moving toward inhabited systems. Marcus studied the tactical display, seeing the inexorable advance of entities that represented annihilation itself. The Devourers appeared as areas of absolute darkness on the sensors, spaces where matter and energy simply ceased to exist. "Time to intercept?"
48 hours if we deploy everything we have, Admiral Morrison replied.
"But, Captain, these aren't like anything we've ever faced. Our weapons might not even function against entities that exist partially outside normal spacetime."
"Then, we test the new technologies," Marcus decided.
Signaled the Galactic Cooperative Council. "It's time to see if our theoretical preparations work in practice."
The response was immediate and overwhelming.
Within hours, ships from every member species were converging on the Kepler sector. The Void Dragons sent their most powerful dimensional manipulators.
The Zephyrians emerged from their hidden sanctuaries with weapons that existed in mathematical rather than physical space. Dozens of other species contributed their unique capabilities to the growing fleet. Marcus found himself aboard the command ship Unity, a vessel that perfectly embodied the cooperative principles he had written into cosmic law. Its hull was grown from Trilorian biomaterial, its weapons systems designed by combined human-Andorian engineering teams, and its navigation controlled by Zephyrian computational matrices integrated with Dragon-scale quantum processors. Fleet status report, he requested as they approached the intercept coordinates. Commander Torres, who had served with Marcus during the original mission to Draconis Prime, looked up from his tactical station. 237 ships from 27 species, sir. Each vessel represents a different combination of cooperative technologies. If our theories are correct, we should be able to engage the Devourers on multiple dimensional levels simultaneously. The main view screen showed the approaching enemy. The Devourer ships were impossible to look at directly, they seemed to exist as wholes in reality itself, consuming light and matter with equal efficiency. Worse, space around them was beginning to distort, suggesting they were already beginning to feed on the fundamental forces that held the local area together. All ships, this is Captain Chen, Marcus announced over the fleet communication network. We're about to test everything we've learned about cooperation against an enemy that represents pure consumption. Remember, our greatest weapon isn't any single technology, it's our ability to work together. The battle began unlike any conflict in galactic history. Instead of opposing fleets maneuvering against each other, the cooperative fleet formed an intricate pattern around the Devourers, each ship contributing its unique capabilities to a combined assault. Dragon ships phased partially out of normal spacetime, attacking the Devourers from angles that didn't exist in standard geometry. Zephyrian vessels fired weapons that existed only in mathematical space, striking at the theoretical foundations of the enemy's existence. Human ships coordinated the assault, their natural ability to integrate multiple perspectives making them ideal fleet commanders. But the Devourers were not passive targets. As the fleet engaged them, reality around the battle zone began to break down. Space itself started consuming the attacking ships, and several vessels simply ceased to exist as the enemy fed on the matter and energy that composed them. "Sir, we're losing ships faster than we can damage them," reported Commander Torres. "The Devourers are using our own attack energy to strengthen themselves." Marcus watched the tactical display with growing concern. Their combined assault was impressive, but the enemy was adapting faster than anticipated. Worse, he could see additional Devourer signatures appearing at the edge of sensor range. Reinforcements were coming. "Signal the fleet," he ordered. "Implement Protocol Unity." Protocol Unity was the most ambitious cooperative technology they had developed, a system that would temporarily merge the consciousness and capabilities of volunteers from every participating species. It was theoretically possible under the cosmic laws Marcus had written, but had never been tested on such a scale. Across the fleet, representatives from every species placed their hands on quantum resonance chambers, opening their minds to connection with every other participant. Marcus felt the joining begin as thousands of alien perspectives flowed through his consciousness. The experience was overwhelming and beautiful. Through Zephyrian eyes, he perceived mathematical relationships that described reality's underlying structure. Dragon senses showed him the flow of cosmic forces across multiple dimensions. Trilorian bioawareness revealed the living connections between all things. Human intuition bound it all together into patterns that could be understood and acted upon. United in purpose and perspective, the fleet's assault changed completely. Instead of attacking the Devourers directly, they began repairing the damage the entities caused to spacetime itself. Dragon ships used dimensional manipulation to restore normal geometry while Zephyrian vessels recalculated the mathematical foundations of local reality. Human ships coordinated the effort, ensuring that every repair was perfectly synchronized. The effect on the Devourers was immediate and devastating. Deprived of the dimensional distortions they needed to feed, the entities began to weaken. Their ships, which had seemed invulnerable, started showing signs of structural failure as normal physics reasserted itself in the battle zone. "It's working," Elena reported from her position monitoring the fleet's bio-readings. "The Devourers can't maintain their form in properly stabilized spacetime." But Marcus could see through the shared consciousness that this was only the beginning. Across the galaxy's edge, thousands more Devourer entities were beginning to move toward inhabited systems. The three ships they were fighting were just an advance guard. Through the quantum connection linking every participating species, Marcus began to implement the true purpose behind the cosmic laws he had written during the convergence. Instead of merely defending against the Devourers, the combined fleet began constructing something unprecedented, a barrier of cooperative consciousness that existed across multiple dimensions. Every species contributed their unique understanding of reality's nature.
The dragons provided knowledge of dimensional manipulation. The Zephyrians offered mathematical frameworks for stable spacetime.
Dozens of other species added their perspectives on physics, consciousness, and the nature of existence itself. What emerged was a defense that existed not in normal space, but in the realm of organized thought and cooperative will. The barrier spread outward from their position, carried by quantum effects that operated faster than light, creating a boundary that the Devourers simply could not cross. Incredible, breathed Saxthara, who was participating in the connection from the Dragon flagship. You're not just defending against them, you're transforming the boundary between our galaxy and the void into something that strengthens reality rather than weakening it. The three Devourer ships, cut off from the void that sustained them and unable to feed on the perfectly stabilized spacetime around them, began to collapse in on themselves. Within minutes, they had been reduced to normal matter, their alien intelligence finally destroyed by exposure to the cooperative harmony they couldn't comprehend. But the true victory was larger. The barrier of cooperative consciousness continued to spread, creating a defensive perimeter around the entire galaxy. Anywhere the Devourers tried to penetrate into normal space, they would encounter the combined will of dozens of species working together to maintain reality's stability. As the immediate threat ended, Marcus felt the quantum connection beginning to fade. But, before it dissolved completely, something remarkable happened. Every participating consciousness contributed a small portion of their awareness to a permanent network, a galactic mind dedicated to maintaining the cooperative defense against future threats.
The Eternal Vigil, Voxmiron announced as he observed the phenomenon from his ancient ship.
A living barrier maintained by the combined will of free species. It will last as long as cooperation continues to flourish in our galaxy. In the weeks that followed, the implications of what had been achieved began to transform galactic civilization. The cooperative technologies that had been developed to fight the Devourers found peaceful applications beyond imagination. Art forms that required multiple species to create. Scientific discoveries that could only be made through combined perspectives. Cultural exchanges that enriched every participating civilization. Marcus returned to Terra Prime to find humanity fundamentally changed. No longer content to explore the galaxy as isolated explorers, humans had become the galaxy's premier facilitators of cooperation. Human diplomats were in demand throughout civilized space. Human engineers were essential to any major collaborative project. Human philosophers were helping other species understand the deep principles of working together. You did more than save the galaxy, Elena told him as they watched a group of human children playing with young dragons in Terra Prime's expanded cultural quarter. You created the foundation for a future where every species' greatest strength is their ability to cooperate with others. Marcus smiled, watching as the children effortlessly solved puzzles that required both human intuition and dragon spatial perception. I just wrote cosmic law based on what I knew about human nature. The rest was inevitable. Dr. Vasquez looked thoughtful. What happens now? The Devourers are contained, the galaxy is more unified than it's ever been, and cooperation has become the foundation of technological advancement. Now we explore, Marcus replied, gesturing toward the viewport where construction had begun on humanity's most ambitious project yet, a ship designed to carry representatives from every galactic species beyond the galaxy's edge to explore the universe beyond. The cosmic laws I wrote don't just apply to our galaxy. If there are other galaxies facing similar threats, maybe it's time to extend the hand of cooperation across the universe itself. As if in response to his words, the sacred altar of Draconis Prime sent a pulse of energy across the galaxy, a signal that was detected by every species' most sensitive instruments. The message was simple but profound: the cosmic forces had approved of humanity's choice, and the path to even greater cooperation was now open. Standing on the observation deck of Terra Prime Station, surrounded by representatives of dozens of species who had become not just allies but true partners in building the galaxy's future, Marcus Chen realized that being chosen by the sacred altar had been just the beginning. Humanity's greatest adventure, teaching the universe itself the power of cooperation, was only just beginning. In the depths of space, the eternal vigil continued its watch, maintained by the combined consciousness of free beings who had learned that their greatest strength lay not in what they could achieve alone, but in what they could build together. And, at its heart, embedded in the very structure of reality itself, were the cosmic laws written by a human captain who had chosen cooperation over conquest, unity over dominion, and hope over fear. The stars themselves had been commanded not through force, but through the simple recognition that every consciousness in the galaxy was connected, and that together, they could achieve wonders beyond the dreams of any single species.